This is you, and you are here. And here, in this moment, all around this room, sitting right beside you, there are a lot of other yous with so many different stories. So before we get started, let's hear from you. Make some noise if you're in the balcony. Now, make some noise if you're on the floor. Make some noise if you're this person. In this room today, we've got people from all over. Let me hear you if you came in from out of town. Now let me hear all the Wilmington locals. No matter where you're from, you probably came in today with a set of expectations. Maybe you came in hopes of connecting with God. We hope you will. Maybe you came in just to make your mom happy on Easter. We're so glad you chose to be here. Maybe you came with family or friends, or maybe you came here alone. But today, regardless of where you're at in life or why you're here, we believe there's something amazing in store for you. We believe that you matter, that your story matters, that you belong here, and that we belong together. Today, Easter, it's a day of hope, a day of joy, and a day of love. But maybe you're here today and you're tired. Maybe you feel alone or forgotten. We believe that God is here, that He wants to connect with you, and that the love that He has for you is more than you could ever imagine. And so it's our hope that today would be more than just singing songs and hearing a good Easter message, but that you would be able to encounter your Heavenly Father and rediscover that He is madly in love with you.
Don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Jesus, our redemption, our salvation is in His blood. Jesus, light of heaven, friend forever, His kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. How's everybody doing this morning? And we're glad you guys are here. We're going to raise our voices and continue singing. Sing Swing Wide. Just Swing wide, all you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All his children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Swing wide, all you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All his children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Swing wide, all you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All his children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Everyone.
Hey, good morning. You guys can stay standing. If there is a chair beside you, though, that's empty, if you wouldn't mind squeezing in towards the middle of your row, we still have people coming in, and that'll make it a lot easier on them. But we wanted to just say good morning and welcome to Port City Community Church. My name is Lauren, and I'm on staff here at the church. And if today is your very first time here at Port City, then we want to extend just a huge welcome to you, let you know that we are so glad that you decided to come and check it out. And of course, for those of you that come all the time and Port City is home, we're always excited to see you guys as well. We have a lot in store today. We're going to continue to sing some songs together, and then our pastor Mike is going to come out and bring an amazing message. So stay standing, and Janelyn is going to lead us through this next song.
Hey church, it's so good to be together. And I love what we get to celebrate this weekend. We get to celebrate and remember that Jesus not only died on the cross for us, but that he rose again in 3 days and that he is alive today. And when he rose from that grave, his message just spoke grace. And I think that his message to us today, something he wants you to know, is that you are loved, that you are seen, that you are free. And so today, as we sing and as we spend these next few moments together, I pray that you would know those truths, that you are loved, that you are free. So I encourage you guys just to sing out, to raise your hands and worship him with me. Who am I that the highest king would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child
Oh, his mercy is more. Stronger than darkness and new every morn. Oh, our sins, they are many, but his mercy is more. Oh, what love could remember, no wrongs we have done. Omniscient, all-knowing, he counts not their sum. Thrown into a sea without bottom or shore. Yeah, our sins, they are many, but his mercy is more. Praise the Lord. Oh, his mercy is more. Stronger than darkness and new every morn. Oh, our sins, they are many. His mercy is more. Oh, yeah. So much more. Oh, what patience would wait as we constantly roam. And what Father so tender is calling us home. Yeah, he welcomes the weakest, the vilest, the poor. Our sins, they are many, but his mercy is more. So praise the Lord, and his mercy is more. Stronger than darkness and new every morn. Our sins, they are many, but his mercy is more. Yeah. Oh, what riches of kindness he lavished on us. His blood was the payment and his life was the cost. Yeah, he stood neath the debt we could never afford. Oh, our sins, they are many, but his mercy is more. So much more. His mercy is more. Stronger and new every morn. Oh, our sins, they are many, but his mercy is. Praise the Lord. His mercy is more. Stronger than darkness and new every morn. Our sins, they are many, but his mercy is more. Our sins, they are many, but his mercy is more. Oh, our sins, they are many, his mercy is more.
Thank you guys for singing. You can have a seat. We just sang some really, really powerful songs. Things like God is so patient as we constantly roam, and he's a father so tender that he's calling us home. And that our sins, they are many, and yet his mercy is more. Our fears are many, our doubts are many, even our insecurities are many, and yet his mercy is more. And I bet there's some of you in here that could sing those words loud and with confidence and know that God is with you every step of the way. But there might be others of you in here who just hear those words, and that's really, really tough to believe. It was really hard to sing and really hard to believe that about God. And we just want to acknowledge that and know that everybody in here is walking through different stuff, and all of you have different stories, and that's okay. But we also want you to know that if you are in a place where you're just wrestling with your faith, maybe you've got big questions about who God even is, we have a next step for you. And that is something that we do here, and it's called Starting Point. And we're gonna have a few Starting Point groups beginning in just a couple of weeks. And Mike's gonna come out at the end of the service and talk a little bit more about that, but we just wanted to let you know that it's here. And in a Starting Point group, you'll have the opportunity to meet with other people from the church who might even have some of those similar questions that you do, and with a few leaders who just really care about you. They're not trying to convince you of anything. They just want to give you that space to process. So I wanted to give you a heads up, because as Mike comes out here and speaks during this message, there could be some thoughts rolling around in your head. God might just start speaking to your heart, and we don't want you to feel like you have nowhere to process that. There is a next step for you. I'm gonna invite the host team to come down now, and they're gonna collect our offering. And this is something that we do every week here, and there's no obligation to give, but it is a way to give back to the ministries. And so you can do that now, online, or even at guest services. So we'll do that, and then Mike will be out.
Good morning and happy Easter, everyone. There are folks gathered everywhere. We're so glad you guys are here and hope you didn't have too much trouble getting in, and really appreciate everyone being here today on this Easter Sunday. Y'all notice anything different about me? Yeah, I figured. My daughter dressed me today, so this is what I got. So thank you. Yeah, thanks. Today is, we're really glad because so many people come, and some of you are here and you're kind of checking out church, or you're back. This is when you come on Easter and Christmas and whatever. We're really glad you're here. What I want to do today is I want us to really rediscover some things. I want you to think about this sort of symbol that we use when we think about Christianity and we think about Easter. You see this almost everywhere, and the symbol of everybody's familiar with is the cross. I want you to think for just a minute. When you see the cross, what is it you see? For most of you, it's become so commonplace. It's on jewelry, it's on churches, it's on all kinds of different places, and it's just sort of it's a religious symbol. It's a religious symbol that reminds us maybe of what Jesus did for us. It reminds us of the religion of Christianity. It's really become just a religious symbol. And I want for us to rediscover what we see when we see the cross. I want us to think about this a little bit differently, what God did for us on this day. I'm assuming that you know that what we celebrate at Easter is an actual real event that happened in human history. This is not make-believe, and if you're here and you're kind of like, I'm kind of skeptical, I would encourage you to go do the research. What you will find is that it is well documented that a man named Jesus from Nazareth lived in the first century. It is well documented he created a ruckus in Rome or in Jerusalem at that time, and that the Roman government had him executed on a cross. All those things are absolutely documented. It's also documented in Roman history and throughout secular history that this movement that emerged after his death and after his claimed resurrection has had a more significant impact on the world than any other event in human history. There's not a single part of this world that is not touched by this event. We celebrate a real thing that happened, and its implications are on you, aren't just that you get to check a religious box. There's something else. This is what I want for you to see. When Jesus came and he died for us, it wasn't to create a religion. It was actually to put an end to religion. And that's what I want for you to see and understand today. For some of you, you're hearing this, and it's going to sound very different for you. People ask me, so Mike, are you say, I'm not very religious. I'm like, well, me neither. And well, you got to understand this because it's not a religion that God came to start. He actually came to end it and to restore us to what it was we were intended. Over the last few weeks, if you've been here, we've been talking about sin in our church, which is not sin in our church, but sin as a church. There probably is sin there is sin in our church, but you get the idea. And so we've been talking about this. And we use the idea that this began in a garden. That God's initial design, when he created us, he invited us and he said, I want for you to rule and to reign with me. He gave us a commission. He said, I put us in the garden. He said, of any tree you may freely eat from, except for the one tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I want you to participate. I want you to have dominion. I want you to create things with me. I want you to put your hands to work. Let's do this together. It was relational. We were designed to live with God and reign with him under his rule. And that rule was a simple rule. It was governed by a really simple principle, but a really powerful principle called love. And the way we think about love in our culture is we think about love as sort of red hearts and roses and all the nice things that we do for each other. This person, this is love. And in fact, most people, even if you're here and you're not a believer, everybody thinks love is a good thing. I have conversations with people all the time, and when they ask me about, various things, I always usually start with love or some idea that God is love, and most people nod their head and go, yeah, I can get behind that. God is love. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. It's a really nice thing. What we don't understand about love is that it's something more. Love is a force. It's a force. It's a powerful force that does something. It has a power to do something in your life, and a lot of us don't ever get there because we don't ever really learn what it means to receive or to live in love. You see, the way we were intended to live is under one simple rule, the rule of love. And when you think of this, what really happens is the rule, life is basically a way under the rule of love. That's what we were intended to live. That's how everything is designed to work. In the beginning, before the fall, we lived in this place that the Hebrew culture would call shalom. We'd translate it peace. But it's not just peace like we all get along with each other. It's peace like everything is in right relationship with everything else. It's like everything is in right relationship with everything else. Like the way Disney movies portray this, everything is in right relationship with everything else. Can you imagine a world like that? That's what we were designed to live in. It was designed to be underneath this rule and reign of God's love for all that he had made, and we would exist together in a right relationship, everything to everything else. And the fall broke it. The fall wasn't that you did something bad. The fall actually came in and destroyed both love and life. And this is where death entered. This is what happened to us. And it's interesting that what happened wasn't a broken rule. It was broken trust. And I dare say that everyone in this room, everyone gathered out in the halls, everyone where you are, you've experienced broken trust. You've had someone do something to you that made you question whether you could trust them again, even if it was subtle. It's just a little question mark. Sometimes those are the worst. And you know what happens whenever we begin to question things? As soon as we question things, we start trying to control them. And when we control them is by setting expectations and creating rules and systems of punishment. All this we do because life and love have fundamentally been broken. The fall destroyed everything. Sin broke every relationship that you have with everything else. Sin is the reason we struggle with purpose. It's the reason we struggle with meaning. It's the reason we struggle with fear. It's the reason we struggle with all of these things. And what God did for us in his son Jesus, he uses this big word. He says in the Gospel of John, or in the letter that we're going to look at today that John wrote, one of Jesus' close followers wrote, he uses this word manifest. And if you were here at Christmas, you might remember this. I talked about at Christmas that life was made manifest. And today at Easter, I'm going to talk about love was made manifest. This is kind of good for those of you who only come at Christmas and Easter. This is like a 2-part series for you, and you'll kind of get both of them. I'm just kidding. I'm glad you're here. But if you're here at Christmas, you might remember I talked about Bob Ross, right? Remember, say, oh yeah, I remember manifest, because Bob Ross made painting manifest. If you've ever watched Bob Ross, you know, the big Afro guy, and he paints with happy trees. He says, there are no happy accidents. I mean, there are no mistakes, they're just happy accidents. And he'll like, paint these, happy, it's amazing to watch. He's actually like a phenomenon now. When I talked this at Easter, Christmas, I didn't know anybody knew him, but I got all kinds of people posting on Instagram, their kids are painting Bob Ross pictures and the whole deal. He's still like very much a force in our culture. Because he did something for us that needed to be done for those of us who look at this. When you watch him, it's mesmerizing. He paints stuff and you can just see everything kind of come to life right before your eyes. But it's not just that you see it come to life before your eyes. Bob Ross made painting manifest in that we see something. It's not just understandable kind of intellectually. It actually compels us to be involved in it. What you do when you finish watching a Bob Ross episode is you go buy his kit and then you try to paint like him. That's why there's so many people doing it, because he made it manifest. He made it accessible. He made it as though you and I could actually do it and participate in it. That's what it means to make something manifest. When Christ made life manifest, what it means is that we now have this available to us. And when God, through Christ, made his love manifest, it's not just seeable. It's not just understandable. It's actually accessible to us, that we can walk in. And I want to try to explain what that means, what I mean by that. I think a lot of us underestimate the power of God's love and what he's done for us. We just think it's sort of, oh yeah, God loves us, God loves me. We don't really understand what the power of his love is. I want us to rediscover the power of love. It's a force. It's the power to change everything about you if we'll learn what it means to live within and through the love that God has for us. I think a lot of people, you come to church and you see the cross, you think about the gospel that Jesus sent God sent his son into the world to die on a cross, be raised from the dead for our sins. What we kind of assume is that God expected us to behave and we didn't. That's kind of the ultimate problem. God expected us to behave and we didn't. So therefore, he sends his son to die on the cross for our misbehavior, and he raised him from the dead in order to help us behave better than we do. And that's sort of the extent of the gospel that we believe. When you do that, you absolutely erode the power of what is available to us in this thing that God has done for us, that love has been made manifest. For some of you who are here, forgiveness just seems like something, it either in one of two directions. It either seems like perhaps if you're here and you try to behave yourself and you do really good at that, forgiveness sort of seems novel. You kind of think, well, maybe not, I've been pretty good. God doesn't really need to forgive me that much because I've been pretty good. I'm a pretty good person. You're maybe better than most. And others of you that are here, you try to behave and you don't. And what forgiveness has become for you is just license. Well, I'm already forgiven, so why not go ahead and do it? That's how we live. And both of those miss the power of what God has made available to you in his love, what he demonstrated for us in this idea of love. We are more hopelessly separated from the life that we long to live and the love that we're meant to experience than you can ever imagine. And we try to feel that in a gajillion ways. We try to feel it through our pursuits. We try to feel it through the way in which we live our lives by attaining stuff or relationships or going from one thing to the next. We're always looking for some way through which we can experience both life and love. We are more hopelessly separated than we think. Whenever something has to be made manifest, whenever something has to be made seeable, it implies that there's something that we're not quite seeing or getting. God would have to do that if we saw it naturally. So what he did is he sent this and he turned and he said that when we see the cross, I don't just want you to see a religion. I want you to see the power of the love that I have for you that changes everything. I've been married almost 27 years and I've learned a few things about marriage, a lot of them the hard way. But when I was, because what a lot of us do, we come and we'll hear a message about God's love. We start trying to figure it out. We start trying to calculate, okay, well, Jesus did this and that means this and that means this. We start trying to calculate how this is gonna work so we can make a logical decision about Jesus. Well, let me just tell you, love is not a logical thing. When I was 19 years old, I remember this. Julie and I had been dating all through since our senior year of high school. We were high school sweethearts. It's a super sweet and sappy story. I'll spare you the details. We were high school sweethearts. We actually met in the second grade, so I've known her my whole life. And that's sweet. So we get to college, and I remember the very first time I thought, I think I love Julie. I remember that emotion. I remember standing in her driveway, walking away, getting in my car going, I think I'm in love with this person. And my very next thought was, oh my God, this can't be happening. And here's why, because I'm 19. I got a lot of things, I can't be restricted in this way. So I dated her for a little while. We were dating, we were doing really well. And I got this bright idea that, look, this is not a good idea for me to know the person that I'm going to marry while I'm in college. This is too restrictive. It's gonna keep me from doing all the things I wanna do. So I decided I was gonna break up with her. So I wrote her a note. I know some of you are like, I wrote her a note to break up with her. I did write her a note, but some of you sent a text message to break up, so don't judge me, right? And so I wrote her this note, and I go to her, and I'm preparing myself because I was very carefully worded. It's, it's the whole, it's not you, it's me thing. You ever heard that one before? So I did that, and I wrote it all out, and I go to her, and I'm preparing myself. Because Julie she's a sweet, sweet person. I'm preparing for her heart just be broken right in front of me. I'm ready for tears. I'm ready for her to say, oh, Mike, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. I don't know what I'm gonna do without you. And I'm braced for all that. I'm not gonna cave. This is the decision I've made. So I hand her the note. She reads it. No tears. No, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. She said, I don't think this is a very good decision. I'm gonna give you 24 hours to reconsider. I could not figure this out for the life of me. I'm like, what just happened to me? Like, here I am in charge, like all the reasons why, and here's what I learned. One is it took me about 8 hours to go, okay, I want that back, we're good. We're not ever doing this again. I'm like, she knows something that I don't know, right? She sees something I don't see. But what the problem was is I was afraid of the implications of what this relationship might mean to me and its restricting force over my life at a time when I most wanted to be free. And when I realized I was about to give away the very thing that I would find more freedom in than anything else in my life, and that is the freedom of a relationship governed by love. I want you to see how this begins to work because it's played itself out over years and years and years. Love is not logical. You're not gonna sort of go A plus B equals C as you try to figure this out. When you look at what God did for us, it's not logical. Yes, I can spell it all out, I can write, but it's not a logical thing. I mean, even now, when I'm sitting there going, okay, we're gonna go, and my wife will say, hey, Mike, we got a lot of stuff to do. We gotta get to the store. We gotta go get some stuff from Home Depot. We gotta do all this stuff to get ready for blah, 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 whether it's Easter or anything else. I'm like, great, let's make a plan. I'll go to Home Depot. You go to the grocery store. We'll knock this out. That's a really model of efficient planning in my book. And she goes, let's go together. I'm like, why in the world would you go together? Do you know why you would go together? So we can be together. It makes no sense to me in terms of efficiency. But when your relationship is governed by something else, everything changes. It gives you a power that you don't have. The problem is most of us don't understand this power. Do you know where love comes from? Everybody says, oh yeah, God is love. Most everybody on the planet would agree with that in some version. God is love, yeah, I can get behind that. Do we really understand the implications of that? This is how it says in the letter that John wrote, the very back of your New Testament, 1 John, the very back. In chapter 4, actually in chapter 1 it starts and he talks about that Jesus was this life made manifest, seeable, made a way for us to experience and participate. And then in 1 John 4, just a couple of chapters later in this book, he says this, beloved, he calls us beloved. Let us love one another. And everybody kind of goes, oh, that's what a great thing. I love that Bible verse. Beloved, he calls us his beloved. Let us love one another. We should all love one another, and everybody would agree with that as well. But the reason we would agree with it is very different. You think, or most people think, that the reason we ought to love each other is just so we can all get along and be nice. That's not at all what this talks about, what John talks about. He says, beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God. And everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. It's a really profound thing that he says. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. That means that the source of your love has to come from somewhere. When you are able to actually extend yourself to another person, it comes from a relationship that you have, a restored relationship that you have with the rule in which you have been designed to live. My suspicion is it doesn't happen any other way. Now, And some of you go, well, Mike, I don't walk with God and I've experienced love. Yeah, you've danced around it, you've sort of rubbed up against it, you might have even experienced it, but you've never possessed it in a way that changed you, that freed you. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God. Why? It's very simple, because God is love. The implications of acknowledging that God is love means there is a source from which we need to draw that, because if you don't draw it from him, guess what you're gonna do? And a lot of you live like this. You're gonna try to love other people based on how worthy they are of your love. And let me tell you, that is a fun thing to do. It is never freeing, because you're always gauging, you're always comparing, you're always deciding, man, I'm gonna lose this. You're not creating win-wins for yourself, because am I gonna give more than I'm gonna take? And when you feel deficient in that, you're gonna just suck the life out of everybody around you. Do you know anybody like that? So desperate for love, they just suck the life out of everybody. You're missing the source. Your problem isn't that you're not worthy. Your problem isn't that you're not loved. The problem is you haven't connected with the source of love that has proclaimed you and made you worthy. That's the problem. So I want us to see this. I want us to think about this in this way. Because he goes on and then he says this, in this the love of God was made manifest among us. That God sent his son into the world that we might live through him. That we might live through him. That we might live through him. This isn't like about checking a box of what you agree with or don't agree with. Well, I agree with the cross, I agree with the resurrection, so yes, I'm a Christian. I'm talking about living a life that is actually governed by this. You see, the two things I want to mention here, really importantly. What happens in this idea, and I'm gonna put the word love here, because a lot of us, we think about it, we don't really understand what it is or what it does. Love is actually a force. It's a force. It's something that has the power to act on your life and my life in a profound way. It's a force. It's a force that does two things. Number one, it has a force to breathe, or it is the force that breathes worth and value into the soul of another. I want you to think about that. The force of love breathes worth and value into another. Do you know what that means? That means you don't have to do anything to deserve it. It comes to you. When he said that God has demonstrated, this is love, that God made it manifest among us, that he would send his son into the world, what he meant was he was coming to demonstrate for each one of us that we are worthy and that we are valuable. And not only is he gonna proclaim us as worthy and valuable, he's actually going to breathe that into us. That's why when we do things for each other, what we're doing is we're actually breathing worth and value to each other. We have to see them. We have to understand there's a source. Most of us live our lives trying to find out who's worthy to be loved and then love them. And if people aren't worthy, we sort of go, well, I'm really a good person because I love people who aren't worthy. That's not love either. Love breathes value and worth. It sees this. This is what God did for us. We did a whole series on this a few months ago. It breathes worth and value into the life of another person. When you love someone, you're not just saying, oh, I like you a lot. You're actually breathing worth and value into their very being. Where does that come from? Because we are sourced from an infinite supply of that being breathed into us. And that's how he sees every person, everyone. It's what he demonstrated for us on the cross on that day. That's the picture. Now, the second thing, it's really important, and this is really important, that love actually is a force. I wrote in my notes, I said, love has a source and love is a force. If you want to remember that, it's kind of poetic. It's a force that breathes worth and value, but it's also, if you think about this, we were designed to live under the rule of love. Now, most of us, the reason we don't think, I couldn't live under the rule of love. Do you know why you don't believe you can live under the rule of love? Because you don't trust. And all of a sudden you begin to see what was broken. When we learn how to trust, we can learn to live under a simple, which is why Jesus was completely content. All the law and the prophets hinge on these two things. Love God and love others. St. Augustine said it this way. He says, love God and do what you want. Love God and do what you want. So you're like, that's the best Easter message I've ever heard. Let me explain. Love is a force that has the power to govern not our country, but us, the people of God, those who walk with him. He came, sent his manifested love so that we might find life through him. That we will be restored to this way of life under this rule of love. That's the whole picture. That this would be undone and it would be replaced by this. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. That's the demonstration of his love. So here's how this works. You see, I've learned a lot of things in marriage. I know things about how to do things. I know that when you call your wife and tell her you're coming home in a few minutes, you should come home in a few minutes. It's a good thing. I know that you don't blame your wife for not having the fun that you used to have. Hey guys, I can't go play golf today because my wife said I can't. That's not a good strategy. You learn that. Some of you are like, I didn't know that. That's part of the problem. And so there's a way in which you learn these things. And here's what I've learned. The things that I've learned in my marriage are not because we have a rule book that's this thick. Can you imagine how many rules we would come up with after 27 years? It'd be a really long list. And in fact, what if my wife has to make rules in order to get me to behave? You realize when that's happening, the wheels have come off. The more the rules you have to comply, the less trust that is there, the less you are governed by the way in which we've actually been intended. And the problem is most of us don't really understand this because we've never learned. You keep trying to change by finding out what rule God has for you to comply with, and then you just try to work to comply with it because you've never learned what it means to simply be loved by God, to let him breathe worth and value into you. Y'all, the cross is a demonstration of his love for you. The resurrection is the power for you to be reunited, redeemed, and to rediscover that there is a way of life under the rule of love. Do you realize that Leviticus 20:14 has no authority or does not govern my marriage? And some of you, Exodus 20:14. Exodus 20:14 does not govern my marriage. Now some of you are going, what is Exodus 20:14? Some of you are like, I know what it is. I'm a good Christian, smart. Leviticus 20:14 is one of the 10 commands. It simply says, thou shalt not commit adultery. Never have I come home and said, hey, Julie, how are you doing? She says, I'm good, how are you doing? I said, I'm pretty good. Did you commit adultery today? She says, no. I said, did you commit adultery today? She says, no. I'm like, yes, high five, we have a great relationship. That's never happened. It's never happened. See, it's something else that governs that relationship. It doesn't mean that you say, well, that law doesn't govern it. Does that mean you can do what you want? Well, I suppose it does, but the reason it doesn't govern my relationship isn't because the rule doesn't matter. It's because there's a much greater force, there's a much greater power to call something out of us for which we are intended. The problem for a lot of us is we try to logically wrestle through this. We try to logically do this. I was up at a conference a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about this very thing, about presenting the gospel to people in our world. How do you convince people that the gospel is true? And this is exactly what he said. He said, we got to present Jesus as a better option. As a better option. So I asked the question, I said, tell me what you mean by the gospel, that Jesus died for us and that he resurrected and he's a better option. And I said, well, give me an example. And so he gave us an example. He said, suppose there's some frat boy in college. And the frat boy is out chasing women and he's drinking all the time. He's having a big time and he's doing this. And he sits down over coffee and says, let me tell you about Jesus and why he's a better option than you drinking and chasing women all the time. That chasing women and drinking is going to lead you to a life that's going to be a lot of trouble and this is going to happen. You're really going to regret that. But following Jesus, you'll never regret. And so the guy says, okay, A plus B equals C. Okay. Jesus is a better option. And he receives Christ. He says, yep, that's it. We present him as a better option. He made a logical choice on why choosing Jesus was much better than chasing women and drinking beer on a Friday night. And that's really good. And it makes perfect sense until the next Friday night when the guy's sitting in his dorm room by himself. And he's going, this is not the better option. It was much better chasing women and drinking beer on Friday than it is sitting in my dorm room by myself with this person named Jesus that I'm just kind of learning about. And what he's trying to do is to figure out why this is the better option. What he's doing is he is comparing one thing to another thing without the full picture of either of them. Imagine I came home from work like I usually do, and my wife is standing there. We don't have the adultery conversation, but instead I say, hey, how you doing? She says, oh, good, I'm so glad you're home. I said, well, you were the better option. I'm gonna get smacked in the next week. And you know what's funny? Nobody is offended by that. If I say you're the only option, nobody's offended. In fact, you're like, oh. Do you know what's freeing about that? When she's the only option, it's not that I made a logical decision to come home after all the other 3 other options, she's the better one. If she's the only option, what happens is I am now free from comparing everything that happens here to everything else. It's the only way you'll ever find the power to sacrifice. You will never sit in your dorm room by yourself if you're trying to compare a life with Jesus for everything else because you don't understand his love. The love of Christ that is manifest for us is the thing that gives you the power to sacrifice whatever is required to give yourself and to extend yourself to another person and for the glory and the image of what you have actually been created for. What I'm asking, what Jesus came to do for you isn't to make you behave better. He came to redeem you to the very life that you were intended to live, to a way of life under the rule of love. And that's why he demonstrated his love for us on the cross so that he would breathe worth and value into you. And the way in which we learn how to allow this same force to govern us isn't by trying harder. It isn't by trying harder. It's by learning how to walk in a relationship with him. Do you know why our mission statement is what it is? Our mission statement is to reach people and help them walk with God. And the reason our mission statement is what it is because we're not trying to reach people and convince them that we're right. We're not trying to reach people and get them to check a box or make a religious decision. Because what I believe is making a religious decision might make you feel better about yourself. It won't change your life. What will change your life is walking with Jesus Christ in a relationship that has the power to demonstrate and to breathe his love into your life, your worth and value to him, and be a context for that in which you are then free to give yourself. You know, as I thought about this, I said, why is it that Leviticus or Exodus 20:14 doesn't govern this? It's not because I'm a good husband. Now, I hope I'm a good husband. That's not the reason. It's not that I try hard. It's that something has emerged from this relationship that I have, from the freedom of the love that exists in this relationship. And the thing that gets expressed, the freedom of love expressed, is faithfulness. You don't try harder to be faithful. You actually walk in it. It's the only option. You're not comparing it to this or this. It's the only option. You know, there is nothing else on the planet that has made a way for what was broken to be restored. God is love. There's no other source that's going to breathe worth and value into you like his love for you. It is only demonstrated in his son, Jesus Christ. There's no other power other than the resurrection that's going to make a way for you to live such that you're actually free. Do you know how freeing it is to not have to live under a bunch of rules and laws, but to live in a way of faithfulness? When you see the cross, what do you see? What I hope you'll see is freedom. I hope that you'll see that a way has been made to live in the way that every human being is longing, is desperate to live, and God has done that for you. Our mission is to reach people and help them walk with God. What we want for you to do is not to check a box and make a religious decision. I want for you to enter into a relationship, a life-giving relationship that has the power to change your life. See, some of you are sitting there and you're going, I don't know, man, it's gonna restrict my freedom. This is gonna keep me from doing what I want. And what you realize is that you don't quite know what you don't quite know, but someone else knows something that you don't. And you know what happens? You simply trust that, and you find that a freedom that you never thought imagined. We're going to close our time together by proclaiming this truth, that when we see the cross, we see freedom. I hope that's what you'll see. Father, thank you for the cross. Thank you that you have demonstrated your love for us, and that love isn't just something that makes us feel better. It's actually a force that makes us different. It frees us. God, there are folks within the sound of my voice who have just made promises after promises after promises not to do stuff again, or that they'll make up for what they've done, or whatever it is. And God, I pray that you would free them from that and just invite them into a relationship. You breathe life and worth into them. And God, in the context of our lives through you, let us find the power that your love has to govern us. When we see the cross, let us fix our eyes on the freedom that it brings. And we see the grave, all the things that bring death. We'll see your son Jesus. We'll behold him, and our hearts will be awakened to the life that we've been restored to. Father, I ask these things in the name of his name.
Let's all stand and sing together as one church. If love endured that ancient cross, how precious is my Savior's blood. The beauty of heaven wrapped in my shame, the image of love upon death's frame. If having my heart was worth the pain, what joy could you see beyond the grave? Love found my soul worth dying for. How wonderful, how glorious, my Savior's God, victorious. My chains are gone, my debt is paid. From death to life and grace to grace. If heaven now owns that vacant tomb, see freedom. When I see that grave, I'll see Jesus. And from death to life, I will sing and praise. And the one, come on, let's sing it now together. When I see that cross, I see, come on. When I see that grave, I'll see Jesus. And from death to life, I will sing your praise and the wonder of your grace. When I see that cross, I see freedom. When I see that grave, I'll see Jesus. And from death to life, I will sing your praise and the wonder of your grace. When I see that cross, I see freedom. When I see that grave, I'll see Jesus. And from death to life, I will sing your praise and the wonder of your grace. How my soul will sing your praise and the wonder of your grace. How my soul will sing your praise. How wonderful, how glorious, my Savior's scars, victorious. My chains are gone, my debt is paid. From death to life, and grace to grace. So when I see that cross, when I see that cross, I see freedom. When I see that grave, I see Jesus. And from death to life, I will sing your praise and the wonder of your grace. When I see that cross, I see freedom. When I see that grave, I'll see Jesus. And from death to life, I will sing your praise and the wonder of your grace. How my soul will sing your grace and the wonder of your grace. How my soul will sing your grace. How wonderful, how glorious, my Savior's scars, victorious. My chains are gone, my debt is paid. From death to life and grace to grace.
That was a great way to close our Easter celebration. Here's what I want you to know. As I mentioned earlier, our mission is to reach people and help them walk with God, not to convince you we're right or to get you to do something that you're not really prepared to do. Now, if you're here and you're curious or you want to know how to have a relationship with Christ, we'll be down front. We would love to have that conversation with you. But I'll tell you what I'd like to do. I think there are more of you here that probably have questions. You're probably wondering, maybe questions you didn't think you were allowed to ask in church. We have a place for you and a really easy way for you to take that step. You can do it with your spouse or whatever you might want to do if you want to do it by yourself. But it's just PC3Wilmington/Easter. It will help you or walk you through how to sign up for Starting Point. Starting Point is simply an environment for which you can have a conversation which we believe your questions deserve. You don't need pat answers. You don't need logic. You need someone to walk with you through what it is that you're dealing with. I believe that this is the best way for you to process those things and actually understand what it means to have a relationship with Christ. We will be so honored to help you take your first steps towards Him or perhaps even your first steps with Him. It's really simple. You're gonna get a card on the way out. Everybody's gonna get one because on the back it's got our next series. But you're gonna get a card on your way out. And if you're here and you have those questions, please know that our mission statement isn't just a mission, it's what we believe. We wanna help you. We'd be delighted to help you take whatever steps you need, maybe towards Him or perhaps your first steps with Him. And the best possible way to do that is to be a part of Starting Point. We are ready for you. We would love to help you in that way. Thank you guys so much for being here. Happy Easter, and we'll see you guys next week as we start our new series. Okay, thanks.